This is a big cedar tree. He's clearly been eating too many saturated fats. Read on. What's up, everybody? Welcome to Fontanalis. This channel is about introducing better thinking to the world. And today's video seems like a silly question. Which is healthier, fiber or saturated fat? And the inspiration for this video, I was watching this vegan and he was talking about how he does all these what I eat in a day videos. He was saying that he did one where he had like this coconut curry and people got on him about the saturated fat content, and he was very adamant. He was like, I don't support, the idea that saturated fat is healthy. It was just, one of his videos. And that got me thinking. I don't know why, but it got me thinking, which is healthier, fiber or saturated fat? And of course this is a silly question, right? Dumb question. Everybody knows fiber is so much healthier than saturated fat. Fiber does so many good things. Saturated fat is evil. But I was thinking a little bit more. And there are a couple questions you kind of have to overcome to think that fiber is more healthy than saturated fat. The first, of course, is that saturated fat is the preferential fuel of human cells. And when we store our fat, we actually produce it in saturated fat form. And the second is that when mammals produce milk, they produce a disproportionate amount of saturated fat as the fatty content of that milk. So why would mammals be feeding their young saturated fat if saturated fat was bad for mammals, right? Why do all mammals have a large proportion of saturated fat in their milk? And then the third question, and this is really the one that tickled me, is why do herbivorous mammals ferment fiber into saturated fats? So cattle, hindgut fermenters like gorillas, humans, the nutrition we get from fiber, if we get calories from it, as herbivores have to, is to allow the bacteria in our gut to ferment it into short-chain fatty acids, which are types of saturated fat. These ducks are being very rude. Had to get away from those rude ducks. So you might be saying, okay, short-chain fatty acids, it's different. They're short-chain fatty acids. The saturated fats we get in our diet are mostly medium and long-chain fatty acids. Okay, then why do mammals store the short-chain fatty acids they get from their gut in the form of medium-chain fatty acids? Why is that our storage form for energy? Okay, this is the part of the video where I stop asking questions and start answering them. And of course, the first reason why saturated fats are so abundant in mammals is because that's what our mitochondria want to process. When your mitochondria produce energy from saturated fat, that is actually the least taxing form of energy. It produces the least amount of reactive oxygen species. When you're breaking down polyunsaturated, monounsaturated fats, and sugars in your mitochondria, you're producing more oxidative stress. So your mitochondria actually want saturated fat, and your mitochondria are the fountain of your metabolic health. The second reason for this is that we need saturated fats to build our cell membranes. They're actually the most common of the type of fats in our cell membranes. You hear about how polyunsaturated fats, omega-6s and omega-3s, are important for cell membranes, and that's true, but only in small quantities. Only like 5% of the cell membrane should be polyunsaturated fats, and the reason for this is polyunsaturated fats are the most liquid. If you have too many of them in your cell membrane, they get all floppy. You want your cell membranes to be mostly rigid, and that's what saturated fats do. They're straight, rigid, solid at room temperature, and they keep your cell membranes nice and tight. And another reason is lipoproteins. So lipoproteins actually basically look the same as a cell. It's just they don't have any cellular components, and instead of having two layers of phospholipids, they have one layer of phospholipids, okay? And lipoproteins are what people refer to as cholesterol. So when you hear somebody say cholesterol, just call them a moron and say they mean lipoprotein, because it's the source of a lot of confusion, actually, the difference between those two. Cholesterol is a molecule. Lipoproteins are something completely different, which carry cholesterol. And if our lipoproteins have too much polyunsaturated fat and too little saturated fat, the same issue occurs as with cell membranes. They get too floppy. And I have a hypothesis that this is a big contributor to foam cells, which is the cholesterol which enters a degraded state and is taken up by white blood cells and forms atherosclerosis, aka artery plaques, which is heart disease. Now, this is the part of the episode where I start talking about fiber. So I've been saying the pros of saturated fats. What are the cons of fiber? If I am asking this salacious question of which is better. So the thing about fiber, people think we need it for our digestive process to happen correctly. But here's the thing. You only need fiber if you're consuming starches or other simple carbs. Okay, and the reason for this, there are two. The first is there's this idea that if you don't eat fiber, you'll get constipated. This is only true if you're eating starches. Starches are what build up in your small and large intestine. They're what cause those blockages, okay? Because they digest more slowly. Fats get taken up really quickly. Starches, they take a while, right? So by eating starches, you're contributing to constipation, and you only need fiber to avoid constipation if you're getting those starches, because that fiber helps push those starches out of the way. The second reason why you only need fiber if you're eating a lot of carbohydrates is because of our gut microbiota. So people always talk about the benefits of getting fiber in your diet for your gut microbiome. And this is partially true. And the reason it's partially true is it's only true if you're eating simple carbohydrates. And the reason for this, there's actually a lot. Dr. Rhonda Patrick talks about it in some of her videos. Basically, the small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, when you have bacteria coming into your small intestine where they're not supposed to be, it's because you have too many carbophagic, carb-eating bacteria. And when you starve those for even just a little bit, they swim up from your colon into your small intestine and cause that overgrowth. And of course, fiber is good for this because it provides a nice, long-lasting, slow-digesting source of calories for these bacteria and causes them to stay in the colon rather than the small intestine. So if you're not eating carbohydrates and causing that carbophagic population of bacteria to thrive, you don't need fiber to prevent that overgrowth, to prevent that issue. Okay, there's probably a lot more I could say in this video. I just wanted to throw some ideas out there, put some thoughts up in the air, just because I thought it would be fun. And because a lot of people don't know, they're not aware of any of these issues that I'm talking about. They just know of the epidemiological issues where people eat saturated fats, they put mayo on their hot dog, which is not a saturated fat, and the health problems associated with eating hot dog buns, mayo, ketchup, and all that other stuff gets translated as, oh, it's because of the hot dog. That's essentially what happens. Epidemiology can't discern between meat, like a steak on your plate, and a hot dog or a frozen pizza or something which is just filled with absolute garbage, okay? So anyways, if you liked this video, go ahead and subscribe if you want more on it. Give me a like. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below, and I will see you next time.